everyone! I hope your day is going well wherever you are in the world. I just wanted to pop on and make a quick video for you all about the MLC group work that you're starting this week. So our MLC circles are the small virtual literature circles that you'll be working in for the semester. And each of these groups consists of 4 to 5 members. And throughout these different weeks, you'll be rotating through 4 different roles, including the reader response lead, discussant, summarizer, and commentator. And from this work, you're going to have 2 projects. So one is the ongoing reflections you're going to be doing on your learning in your MLC portfolio, and the other is the reader response paper that you're going to be writing. Now, I do have a document on Brightspace that talks about these assignments in a lot more detail, and you can find that under the assignments subfolder. But I'm just going to touch on a few key points here that I've been getting some questions about. So let's start off by talking about the different roles that are within the group. So the first is the reader response lead. And the reader response lead is responsible for drafting a reader response paper to share with the group and then later to submit to me for assessment. And so I've suggested that they get this done by Friday of the first week of your modules. And the discussant is really the leader for the MLC group discussions that you're going to be having. So they are responsible for creating a list of questions based on the readings, the reader response paper, and the additional resource that's provided by the summarizer. So during the meeting, they are really in charge of chairing the meeting as well, posing questions and making sure everyone gets the opportunity to contribute equally to the discussion that's going on. And this may be done synchronously or asynchronously depending on the preferences of your group. The summarizer has 2 tasks really. The first is at the same time that the reader response paper is being shared, they share an additional resource to get some discussion going in their group. And it's really up to you what you want to include for this additional resource. It may be something you recently saw in the news, it could be a journal article, it could be a video. And the second part of their job is to take notes during this discussion that occurs within the group and write a brief summary of what was discussed in the group to share on Brightspace with the rest of the class in a discussion board. And then the bulk of the commentator's responsibility really comes at the end of the module. So their job is to go through all these different posts that the summarizers from each group have made, and then they write up a bit of a summary that they can share with the rest of the group, just so the group can get a taste for what was going on in the other groups. For example, they may want to focus on what each group chose to focus on. They may talk about some overarching themes or some key points that they want to share with the group. Now, these key tasks or responsibilities are what is included in part of the MLC portfolio, in addition to their reflection on their learning in that module. I also include a tentative schedule that your group may want to follow. You don't have to follow this if you don't want to. It's really up to your group and what works for you. This is just kind of what previous students have done with this. So in the instruction guide, I include a couple different versions of this. So there is a Gantt chart that you can take a look at for those of you who are a bit more visual and like to see it spread out in a chart. And I also have tables under each of the roles that you can take a look at that highlights the different responsibilities and the proposed due dates within your group. But the general flow of what's going to happen in the group is for the first few days, you'll be focusing on doing your readings, and the reader response lead will be drafting their response. And during this time, the summarizer will also be looking for an additional resource, which they will then share at the end of that week with the rest of their group. And while all the group members are taking a look at this and providing some feedback, the discussant is also coming up with some discussion questions that they would like to discuss with the group. And the purpose of me letting you do this rather than me just feeding you a list of discussion questions is that you can really tailor it to your own interests and your own perspectives and thoughts that arise as you're doing the readings. And then following this, there'll be some back and forth amongst the group members. If you are in a synchronous group, this may be when you choose to have your meeting where you discuss the readings and the discussant's questions. Or if you're asynchronous, this may be something that occurs over several days, whether it's through email, a Google Doc, a Facebook chat. It's really up to you how you want to connect with your group. Following this, the reader response lead will be working on making some revisions to their paper before they submit it to me for assessment. And during this time, the summarizer will also be writing up their notes that they want to post on Brightspace to share with the rest of the class. And then once these are posted, the commentators will come in and write a brief summary of what was going on in the other groups that they will then share back with their discussion group. And as I said, the dates that I've proposed in this document are just a guideline. Your group may decide to do something a little bit different. As long as everyone's happy, I'm happy. Now the next piece is the MLC portfolio. This is where you're going to be documenting your MLC work, as well as reflecting on your learning that occurred throughout this module. And this is probably something that you won't do until closer to the end of the module. So what's included in the MLC portfolio? The first part is you're going to be asked what your role was for that module. So for example, the reader response lead. What I call the artifacts from your role. So if you are the reader response lead, you'll include your paper here. If you're the discussant, you'll have your discussion questions. The summarizer will post a link to whatever their additional source was, along with their summary that they posted on Brightspace. And the commentator will include a copy of the commentary that they wrote for their group. The next two pieces are really reflecting on the group processes. So first you want to talk a little bit about what went well in your group that week, and then you want to talk about your even better ifs. So what would have made this even better? And a really good thing to include here is some actual concrete steps that you could implement in the following module. And then I have a couple of reflective questions. The first one looking at new learning that occurred. So what did you learn about teaching, learning, or knowing during this module that you didn't know before or hadn't previously considered? And also how you might apply this to your future practice. And then connections to your teaching philosophy. So how might the ideas presented in this module impact or not impact your philosophy of teaching? And this piece is really meant to help you work on your philosophy of teaching and learning. Now, since this is kept in a Google Doc, you don't actually have to submit it through Brightspace. I'll just go into the Google Doc after the due date. However, if you want to present your portfolio in a different format, then you can just email it to me as well. So the final day to revise your Google Doc or email me your portfolio in its final form will be on November 25th at midnight. Give, take a bit. I know we have a lot of different time zones, so don't worry about that too much. And the rubric I'll be using to assess this is included in the syllabus. And here I'm using a holistic rubric. I'll also be doing some formative assessment throughout the module, so giving you a little bit of feedback as you go. Now the next piece is the reader response paper. So this is a paper that you're going to be writing during the week that you're assigned the role of the reader response lead. And what you choose to write on is really going to depend on how you read the readings, your own interests, your interpretations. So I don't really have any strict guidelines here for what you need to focus on, just that, it needs to be something emerging from the readings you did that week. And it's really important to note here that the reader response paper shouldn't just be a summary of what's contained within the chapters. This really should be something that your group's going to be able to use to inform a critical discussion. Instead, you can focus on key ideas from the book chapters and use that as a launching point for critically discussing contemporary issues and complexities related to teaching, learning, and knowing in your context. So this is really meant to be a way for you to write about your thinking about the readings rather than just summarizing them. And a helpful way of approaching this can be considering the following prompts when you're writing. So a major interesting aspect. So what aspect of the reading did you find particularly interesting and why? Your personal response. So what is your personal or professional response to this? How is it relevant to your thinking about educational practice, learning, and teaching? And maybe perhaps ending on some takeaways or questions. So were there any major takeaways for you from the reading? Or does this just raise further questions for you? And what kinds of questions does this raise? So your paper should be 750 words approximately, give take about a half page. And it's due on the Wednesday following the week that you have been the reader response lead. So if you write the reader response for standardized education, you don't have to submit it to me until the first Wednesday of authentic education. And this is submitted through Brightspace, and once again, the rubric for this is contained in the syllabus. And that's all for now, folks. I hope this little overview was helpful. Like I said, please do refer also to the document that you can find on Brightspace. But after looking at that, if you have any further questions, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to field your questions. And as always, I will see you all online.